Here we
into
go.
menstrual rags. Like, believe me, when it comes to salvation, there's nothing we can do. If our works are equivalent to
Believe
filthy
me, tremendous. There's nothing we can do. It's nonsense. Look at this guy. He's like, yeah, 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 get him. They're trying to satisfy the demands of the antinomian haters.
rags when it comes to attaining salvation, why now all of a sudden do you think that
Yeah,
the
so a lot of you guys are using
same
the word salvation when you should be using the word justification.
um,
There's, according to Catholic belief, there's like two layers of justification, and salvation is a little bit different than justification. But free gracers, hyper gracers, and a lot of Protestants, they use justification and salvation interchangeably. I think it's a mistake. I think it's a big mistake.
thing now that you are saved? If you're saying that you have to maintain your salvation, that is a works-based salvation.
And if that's a works-based salvation, then we're saved. Then it's true. It's true, you guys. Works-based salvation is true. There's multiple different versions of works-based salvation, and every Lordshipper is against the works of self-salvation, the Pelagianism, and the circumcision version of works salvation. We're against them. And there are some Hebrew Israelites who, they do hold to the demonic, circumcision works, and we would call them works salvationists, work salvation heresy. But if you're a free gracer, anyone that disagrees with you about anything as far as the quote unquote core issues, which is the Gnostic gospel, 1 Corinthians 15, 1-4, whatever you want to call it, the John 3:16, Acts 16:31 mix, the superficial belief alone, faith alone, the fourth generation faith alone. That's a core issue in free grace. And if you disagree with that, you are a heretic, a damnable heretic. And what's going to happen is it's works. And now you're a works-based salvationist. And then you go into the third or fourth or fifth or sixth category of what a works salvationist is. There's some truth to the works salvation heresy. And by the way, the word heresy has been blasphemed. To be a heretic, you used to have to deny the deity of Christ, deny the virgin birth, something crazy, and you're a heretic. But now it means more of what it actually means in the Greek, which is, it comes from the Greek word heretikos, which means the ability to choose. So a heretic is someone, they're choosing, the origin, it's just they're choosing beliefs, and when they choose something that we don't like, they're a heretic, And I call them the bunny rabbits for Christ. It's a heresy. A heresy is a heresy. And that's a pun. And people pretend like they don't get that pun. That's why I call them the bunny rabbits for Christ, is when it's a heresy, it's the heresy, Heresey is the heresy. But yeah, I use the new, it's like the word trolling. The word trolling, when it first came out, it was a very specific meaning. People who anonymously piss people off, irritate people, make them angry over the internet anonymously. That was the only way to really qualify for that definition. A troll, But these days, it's taken on a new meaning. It can mean in a lot of contexts just messing around. Oh, he's trolling. He's, using sarcasm, or he's, it's a much wider net. And that's the way that words move and change. And being one of those people who says, well, Christmas was a pagan holiday a long time ago, it becomes the origin source fallacy. By the way, shout out to Toronto Bible Study, who he's not a big fan of fallacies. He believes in what's called the fallacy. And there's some truth to that. The fallacy, it's a formal fallacy. It's a true, it's a great thing, So shout out to Toronto Bible Study. He's not as good as, no nonsense Christianity. And I don't think he ever will be. But hey, I'm rooting for you guys. I want you guys to grow up and be big and strong, 50, 100, 150,000 subs,
And I think a lot.
It's great, and Toronto Bible Study, love him to death. I'm not going to say anything mean here. What's his name? Isaac Nabelsky. God's Integrity Pathways. Yes. There's that little voice in your head. Don't say anything mean. It's like he's very, he reminds me, Isaac, he's filled with love. And not just a love, but a hatred for hatred. He's oozing with forgiveness. Isaac Nabelsky. You guys want to check him out. 532 subscribers. Anyways. He hates hatred. Shout out to the Mormons, by the way. The Mormons, they hate hatred. They're very good at not hating people, avoiding the murderous heart. Mormons, Latter-day members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. The bunny rabbits for Christ. Big bunny rabbits. Big bunny rabbits, you guys.
Christians forget that the guy who made the video on me, he's under that misconception, and so it's very subtle. And I want Christians to know that as well. That is works based.
Yeah, but I remember
it's very subtle. That's works based. It's the fifth category. Listen, if there's 7 definitions of works based, I'm against 2 of them, right? But I don't judge you guys if you're against 3 or 4. But if you're against all 7, you're a Gnostic. And that's why it's so ridiculous. It's heresies themselves are doctrines of men. Not all of them are wrong, obviously. There are heresies that are true. If you use the definition of heresy where you're choosing a belief. But there are doctrines of men that are not true. And there are condemnations of doctrines of men that are also not true. So you got to watch out for that.
first.
Just because it's a doctrine of man doesn't mean it's false,
God,
And also it can change forms, like the word heresy can change its form. Faith alone, when it originally came out, it's hilarious. We're going to protest the Catholic Church. Let's disagree with them on everything. And let's create a semantics lexicon. Let's create our own special vocabulary. The nomenclature of Protestantism is against the Catholic Church, but at the end of the day, we all believe the same thing. What's hilarious is that Martin Luther actually became a works-based, law-abiding believer at the end of his life, and he even wrote about it. But no one reads about. Nobody cares. We're just gonna look at your early writings, what you believed before you said this at the end. But no, the original doctrine of man, faith alone. There was some truth to that. It was faith apart from works of self. It was faith apart from works of the Mosaic law, circumcision. And that's what the quote-unquote faith alone was. And that's true, and there's no debate there. Without holiness, no one will see God. The original version of faith alone, they did not disagree with Hebrews 12:14, not at all. I mean, maybe deep down they did, which is why they wanted to get rid of Hebrews, Jude, Revelation, and and James. But no, the original doctrine of man did not deny works for salvation. It just denied works of self and works of the law. So if that's what you mean by faith alone, then yeah, I guess, okay, cool. But just so you know, faith alone is not in the Bible. It's a doctrine of man based on a bunch of Bible verses. And the new versions of faith alone do include prayer. They do include baptism. They do include holiness. And if that's what you mean by faith alone, I'm not saying you go to hell, but you deserve to go there. You should go to hell. If you're preaching it, it's going to be harder to get to heaven. Now you're falling into heresy. Now you're a black rabbit. That's a bad heretic. You know, the white rabbits, the righteous rabbit, you know, they make up their own doctrine, but they're true. It's true. Like the Trinity is something that people made up. It's a doctrine of man, not in the Bible. But it's true. You know, Jesus is God. There's some truth to that. There's a lot of truth to that. One being, three co-equal persons. Okay, well, it's not in the Bible, but take this verse here, this verse here, this verse here, pray about it. It's really not that bad. With the Trinity, it's not that bad, you guys. You know, there's some worse. You know, there's some bigger. I mean, there's some bad things out there. You know, there's some bad sheep out there, and they will lead you into doctrines of demons. The Trinity is not a doctrine of demons. It's a good doctrine. You know, it's a good doctrine of man. And if you're Catholic, it's a church doctrine. But the thing with the Trinity, it could be sectarian. Okay, well now you could argue it's a doctrine of demons. Oh, you don't hold to the Trinity. Well, now you're going to hell. Wasn't that a little harsh? Isn't that a little harsh? He denied Tertullian. Okay, well, when there's one finger pointed at him, there's three coming back to you. Could you imagine if someone said you're going to hell because you didn't believe in the doctrine of puppies for Christ? Puppies for Christ, what's that? Well, it's a doctrine that says that God's discipline exists. Oh, well, I don't hold the puppies for Christ. Oh, well, you're going to hell because now you're denying Hebrews 12:6-8, Revelation 3:19, Proverbs 3:11, Deuteronomy 8 verse 5, Psalm 94 verse 12, and Psalm 119:71. See? No, so now you deny the Bible? You see how ridiculous that is? And then the guy says, okay, I'm sorry. I submit to you. I do hold the puppies for Christ. I didn't know what that was. No, that's not appropriate. Let the guy reject puppies for Christ. Puppies for Christ is a doctrine of man. It's a doctrine of children. It's like a doctrine of children. You give it to kids. Hey, you give it to, it's a Matthew 18:3 ministries. It's a true doctrine. Whom the Lord loveth, he chasteneth and scourgeth every son whom he receiveth. There's some truth to that God disciplines those whom he loves. And if ye be without chastisement, ye are bastards and not sons, illegitimate children. Hebrews 12:8. Well, I agree with that. I just don't agree with puppies for Christ. Okay, that's fine. That's fine. Well, I believe that Jesus is God. I just don't hold to the Trinity. You know what? Fine. It's fine. The problem with the Trinity, it's a doctrine of man treated as a doctrine of God and then preached as such. It can become sectarian, but even when it's not sectarian, you're still opening the door to Calvinism. Calvinism is a doctrine of demons disguised as a doctrine of man, preached as a doctrine of God. Wicked. Very wicked. Determinism? Really? That's my question. Really? Calvinism? Absolutely not. NOT. Very wicked. Calvinism. Total depravity. Wicked. John Calvin read the entire book cover to cover. He was a murderer, wicked man. When he was done reading the Bible, he had this question. This philosophical, question, and he decided to start his theology with this philosophical question. Are we totally depraved? I mean, who reads the Bible cover to cover and comes up with that question? And then to make it even worse, the answer ends up being yes. Yes, we are totally depraved. Well, that's not in the Bible either. But if the answer is yes, that's where monergism comes from. And it becomes the 16th century Augustinian nightmare. And then you have these doctrines of men originating from the pits of hell. And if you have a high view of the Trinity, if you have a high view of faith alone, if you have a high view of all these other doctrines, what's going to keep you from having a high view of Calvinism? Nothing. So that's the problem with the Trinity. Although Puppies for Christ is a great doctrine, the Trinity, it's great because it's true. The original version of faith alone, there's nothing wrong with that, condemning Pelagianism, condemning works of the law, salvation, not works of the moral law, works of circumcision. There's nothing wrong with that. But you need to put a huge color at the top. Hey, this is a doctrine of man. Hey, take it with a grain. These days I tell people to take the Bible with a grain of salt. It breaks my heart that I have to do that. But people are so stupid and they're so wicked. I don't even trust people with the Bible anymore. They're just so stupid and they're so wicked. You need to get to know God a little bit before you even open the book now. It's so sad. The verse numbers, so much influence, the redefinition, the redefining of words. It's a sad, sick, sick, sick world. But if I can lead by example, and I can bash the doctrines of men that are true, such as the Trinity, which is probably the best doctrine of man ever made. You could argue that. I don't even think it's much of a debate, really. But the circle, 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 triangle, it's brilliant, People say that God can't make square circles. Tertullian made a square circle with the Trinity. Well, how is he 1 and 3 at the same time? Well, let me explain it. Circle, 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 triangle. And he got everyone to believe it. It's brilliant in that sense. But the devil's licking his lips. If people have the Trinity on par with, this verse over here, that's out of context. If those two things are equal, my goodness. Now the devil can make his own Bible, his own doctrine. And then I just think, oh, well, you're denying faith alone? Well, I guess you're going to hell now. All you need to do is mix in some half-truths and some lies into the doctrine of man. And put a bunch of truth in there, too. Because even the blasphemous versions of faith alone, they do still condemn works of self and works of the law. So that part of it is true. But then once you start condemning works of faith, works of love, good works, works of prayer, works of holiness, and you throw those out of the salvation mix, and then people are trying to hold on to works, and then as you hold on to works, now they're saying, oh, now you're going to hell because of the works of self part of it and the works of the law part of it. You've attached yourself. You've been DQ'd by Galatians 5:4 and Romans 11:6 because what? You denied our Gnostic gospel. And that's the problem, again, when you have all these doctrines of men. So I would say repent of this. Doctrines of men are dumb. D-O-M. Dumb. They're very dumb. That's what I'm going to call them from now on. Maybe. We'll see. Alright, that's the end of part 3. Maybe I'll react to the video in the background next part. We'll see. Okay, great video, guys.